Well, joining me now is Kirralie Smith from Binary. Kirralie is on the front line fighting for the rights of girls, women and children against the radical LGBTIQA plus political movement, which is causing untold harm thanks to the lack of courage from our politicians. Kirralie, thanks for joining us again this week. Kirralie, a Radio Canada investigation has found children as young as 14 can get prescriptions for puberty blockers in the province of Quebec. Before 2017, no minor girls, that's a girl under the age of 18, had received a double mastectomy, yet last year there were 18, this Radio Canada investigation. A young woman by the name of Jane was sexually assaulted, wanted to transition. There's her image on the screen now with the bandages over where her breasts had been. She started testosterone at 16, got a double mastectomy and immediately regretted it. Kirralie, this has hardly received any media attention. It was an article written in French. This should be world headlines, shouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And look, let me say, first of all, they've got a long way to go to catch up to Australia. Our numbers are, skyrocketed beyond that. But it is absolutely appalling that this child abuse is happening, government-sanctioned child abuse, protected by legislation, where these young children who cannot consent to all the other things that we always talk about, such as tattoos and, other surgeries and marriage and drinking alcohol, and the list goes on, somehow, we're meant to believe they can consent to drastic, irreversible treatments that leave them with more harm than good. We know that our brains have a lot of plasticity, that we can change our minds, but to change our bodies so drastically and so young, and then these poor girls have such deep regret because they've amputated perfectly healthy body parts for the sake of an ideology is just... It makes me want to weep, Lyle.
Yeah, no, me too. In fact, I posted that myself on X this morning. I said, read this and weep, because that's all you can do. That brave Radio Canada investigative journalist sent a 14-year-old actress in, so a child actress, into a gender clinic. Within 9 minutes, she was prescribed puberty blockers. People can go and find the article and Google Translate it. But Kirralie, the sad thing about Jane, whose image we just showed on the screen, she was sexually assaulted in 2020 and decided she wanted to transition to become a boy so that she wouldn't be sexually abused. This is tragic on a whole number of layers, isn't it?
It's incredibly tragic, and it's not an uncommon story. We know that autism plays a factor, but also trauma and abuse. Binary is about to release a book of 10 Australian stories, and that's a factor in these stories as well here in Australia, that we don't solve trauma by cutting off body parts. It's not the way you do it. We need compassion, care, and high-level counselling and psychiatric intervention to help these victims of assault.
Yeah, well, these stories just keep coming out, and it makes you wonder how long Australian politicians and indeed politicians in Quebec can hold out. As you and I have reported and discussed previously, England banned puberty blockers, the Scandinavian countries, so really Australia, Quebec lagging behind. Kirralie, just before the Easter break, there's been leaked recordings emerging of an emergency meeting of officials from Northwest Sydney Football. This is a soccer league here in Sydney, hosting officials from Football New South Wales and club delegates. They had quite a dilemma on their hands when a club won a soccer game with 5 males. What the heck is going on?
Look, football, Northwest Sydney Football and Football New South Wales should be utterly ashamed and embarrassed. That recording is very damning to them, where they, I've heard it, they giggle, try and make excuses, trans women are women, ha ha ha, if that's what they feel like, ha ha. No, they're not. Trans women are men. Only men can be trans women. And they've had this emergency meeting with the club presidents and trying to, not very veiled threats, but threats nonetheless, saying that if teams get together to forfeit against the Flying Bats or against any other team with transgender players or trans-identified players, that there will be reprisals, repercussions, there will be disciplinary action and possible reporting for discrimination. And so they have proven that they have no intention whatsoever of protecting and promoting women, females in this sport, but they are going all out to protect the males, which is absolutely horrendous. And one club president shared a couple of years ago in that exact team, a male player tackled one of his female players and broke her leg in 2 places. The girl who went to help and then sledged the trans player, she was suspended and has never gone back to the game. The girl with the broken leg's never gone back to the game. And 24 female players left that club because they don't want to play against males, and they've got no recourse with Football New South Wales, who refuse to help them and issue threats and sanctions instead.
Shame. That's all you can say. This is just unbelievable. The flying bats, people should keep an eye on that. And kudos to John Ruddock, the Libertarian parliamentarian in the New South Wales Upper House, who I'm not sure if he exposed that first. He certainly put the leaked recording that you just referred to on his X account, and I'd encourage people to go there.
Did a great job. Can I also just say, Lyle, these 5 male players can play in the male competitions. There's mixed competitions. No one wants to exclude them. All happy. We're all happy for them to play soccer or football or whatever you want to call it, but they should not be playing in a female competition. That should be for females only.
Yeah, and look, again, it's the weakness of our politicians that's brought us here. During the 2022 election, as you and I have discussed previously, Senator Claire Chandler, one of the few brave politicians who's spoken out, had a bill to save women's sport, yet Scott Morrison said that was not part of his election agenda. People need to remember that when they think about Scott Morrison's legacy. Kirralie, this whole issue really is quite pernicious against freedom of speech. And now in Scotland, we've seen hate speech laws passed, which essentially ban people from misgendering. If you call a male who thinks he's a female by his correct male pronouns, you can be accosted by the police. Now, J.K. Rowling, of course, the Harry Potter author, she's been outspoken for quite a few years on this, and she has put out a tweet against Scotland's new hate speech laws, writing on X, quote, "I'm currently out of the country, but if what I've written here," that's on X, "qualifies as an offence under the terms of the new Act, I look forward to being arrested when I return to the birthplace of the Scottish Enlightenment," end quote. She's a brave woman, isn't she?
Oh, look, she's fabulous. I've never read one of her books, I'll say, but and we probably don't have a lot in common. But on this issue, 100%. She even went further and said if women in Scotland get arrested for making similar statements, she will word for word repeat those statements and challenge the Scottish police to arrest her also, because she's aware that her platform's very large, she's famous, she's wealthy, so she could fight these things. But she really does stand with the little ones, the unknowns, the ones of us that can't defend ourselves. And I really take my hat off. She's a responsible celebrity. There aren't many of those who's willing to do the right thing and willing to stand up for the voiceless ones. So good on her. I'm a big fan of her in this space.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's just going to require this sustained pressure and dissent to these crazy laws. I mean, you and I have both been in trouble with the law here in Australia. We don't have quite the hate speech laws, but it's not dissimilar. The police aren't necessarily involved at a criminal level, although I should walk that back, because you had the police turn up at your door. You and I have both been compelled to go before Human Rights Commission, so it's not just Scotland. This fight is a global fight. Kirralie, speaking of free speech, and this is back here in Australia as well, Elon Musk, the owner of X, is threatening to sue the Albanese government. The Australian newspaper reports that Musk's X platform has threatened to sue as it faces a fine of up to $800,000 over a post that made supposedly disparaging comments about a transgender activist, Teddy Cook. Here's the post on screen. And Musk wants to protect the right to free speech. Now, this tweet that we're seeing about this Teddy Jones was posted by Canadian Chris Elston, who is also known as Billboard Chris. He's quite prominent, has a big following. And of course, Teddy Jones is an Australian who advises the World Health Organization about transgender issues. It's really important that Elon Musk wins this fight for all of us, isn't it?
100%. I mean, imagine if this was a sitcom. We'd just sit back and laugh and go, how utterly ridiculous. But here we have people outside of Australia fighting for our rights to free speech and to have an important political debate. It's a very important political debate. And, you know, whether he sues the Albanese government or the Safety Commissioner, it's all on the taxpayer, because Albo and Julia Grant will never, ever have to pay a cent out of their own pockets for this. But the point is, you know, they are using their powers in an extraordinarily totalitarian form to try and censor what we're allowed to know, what we're allowed to discuss, what we're allowed to debate. It's unacceptable. We have to fight it. We have to keep exposing it. So thank you, Lyle and ADHTV, for doing this. And the Safety Commissioner has a lot to answer for. She's made some ridiculous threats in the past to Redux magazine, to other publications overseas. I've had interactions with her. It's a very serious issue that we need to keep shining the spotlight on.
It sure is. I was intrigued as I was reading about this during the week because the Safety Commissioner seems to have an enormous amount of power. You mentioned you've had some brushes with her. But this threat to sue Elon Musk, $800,000, or fine him $800,000 for this tweet by Billboard Chris. And I hasten to add, you and I have both posted things far more provocative on X than what Billboard Chris has just posted. So I'm very worried about this. But it seems like the powers that are being exercised are the result of laws passed by the former Liberal government in 2021, by the Morrison government. This astounds me. And it's worth just putting on the screen what the eSafety spokesperson said in response to media inquiries. She said, quote, "Tech platforms do not always consistently enforce their own rules or hateful conduct policies." Now, I don't think what Billboard Chris was posting was hateful. It was just a picture of Teddy Jones.
Truth is not hate.
Truth is not hate, in kink. Anyway, we'll move on with the quote. Conduct policies, which is why Parliament voted to establish the Adult Cyber Abuse Scheme as part of the Online Safety Act 2021 so that eSafety could serve as a safety net for Australian adults facing the most grievous forms of online harassment and abuse, end quote. Now, this is 2021 legislation passed under the coalition government. And now, you know, with this Orwellian sort of safety nomenclature and its title, it's not about safety at all. It's about censoring free speech and important discussion that has to do with the safety of girls and women.
Correct. And it is worth noting that Julie Grant is a former employee of Twitter and has made it very clear that she doesn't like the way Elon Musk and has changed the policies and the practice or everyday running of X. So, you know, you can draw whatever conclusion you like there, but this is not an exercise in safety. I know a lot of women who have even made submissions to eSafety because they've been harassed, doxed, intimidated online. Nothing has been done about it. And yet, when these kinks and fetishes are exposed, you know, the full weight of their power comes down on us. So, you know, it's pretty obvious what's going on here.
Yeah, and what's obvious is the coalition has been asleep at the wheel in facilitating this sort of legislation, which is just dangerously anti-free speech. Speaking of anti-free speech, things that are going, this is quite a theme of today's show. Tuesday, the 9th of April, next week, will mark an important day in Australian history. It will be the first day of a landmark court case that will determine whether sex and gender identity take precedence in law. In law. Now, this is the Tickle versus Giggle case. Tell us what's happening.
Oh, look, again, it's utterly ridiculous. You couldn't write something so stupid that a man wanted access to Sal Grover's Giggle for Girls app. He was denied that access because he is male and this was a female-only app. She's been dragged through the courts for a couple of years now. It will finally go to hearing in the federal court next week. And as you said, it's sex versus gender identity. Let me say, sex relies on biological reality. gender identity denies biological reality. And so there's no way of ever measuring or standardising what gender identity is, but sex is very easy to define, very easy to measure, very easy to standardise. So it should be a lay down misere, but it's 2024 and who knows what's going to happen, but we should all get out there, support Sal Grover, go to the Giggle crowdfund to support her. It's a very expensive case, but this will directly impact all women, all girls in this country, but also all men, because, this is going to change the fabric of our society if Giggle doesn't win. So get behind Sal. It's essential that we win this case.
Absolutely, and we'll certainly keep you up to date as that case progresses through the High Court, or the Federal Court, I believe, next week, and possibly all the way to the High Court. Kirralie, the ABC has issued a rare correction. I just want to put the quote up on the screen and we'll talk about it. On the 27th of March 2023, the ABC broadcast a 7:30 interview with Victorian opposition leader John Pesutto. That interview referred to the organisers of the, quote, Let Women Speak, end quote, event held in Melbourne earlier that month and included a social media post by Posey Parker. Some viewers may have understood the interview to suggest that Kelly J. Keane, aka Posey Parker, who was not named in the interview, who organised the Melbourne Let Women Speak event, has associations with neo-Nazis. The ABC understands Ms. Keane denies any association with neo-Nazis, and the ABC does not endorse any imputation that may have been conveyed to that effect, end quote. Now, Kirralie, this is incredibly significant because Moira Deeming, the Victorian Upper House MP, was also allegedly defamed by John Pesutto as an associate of neo-Nazis. The ABC has apologised, essentially, to Kelly J. Keane. What does that mean for John Pesutto and the imputations he's made for Moira Deeming?
Well, look, it's a very interesting development that the ABC would do this, but I suspect they realise, and their lawyers more importantly realise, they don't have a leg to stand on. They cannot support any accusation against Moira, against Kelly J, or against Angela Jones, who's also bringing a defamation suit against him. They have no neo-Nazi ties. They have no sympathies in that area whatsoever. There is no evidence, no proof. It is mind-boggling that John Pesutto and others are still willing to fight this and willing to go down on this ridiculous claim because they do not have a leg to stand on. So very rarely can you say, well done, ABC. Let's see what happens, and hopefully he will pull out and settle out of court before all this nonsense. Otherwise, he will be exposed as, almost a crazy person for making these accusations and going ahead with it.
Absolutely. And look, I think you and I know that the only reason the ABC issued that correction, that apology essentially, was because they know that they are in legal trouble if they didn't. Surely Pesutto, I would be very worried, man, if I was John Pesutto right now. But he's got a very hard heart, it would seem. Kirralie, just finally, again, this has been a whole segment of just absolute craziness, but so important we discuss this. But back to Canada again, where we started this segment. A man in Canada is apparently suing the Canadian government because he wants taxpayer-funded surgery, get this, to create a vagina while also keeping a functional penis. How can anyone in the LGBTIQA plus political movement be taken seriously?
You can't. I mean, this is the wonderful example of the fetish that it is, the autogonophilia that is behind many of the males who wish to identify as female. Not all, because as we said earlier, some is autism, some is trauma and abuse, but a large number of particularly adult males have a very strong pornography addiction. It's all about arousal. It's all about the domination of women. And to have two sets of genitals that's not normal. That is a fetish, and it should not be indulged with surgical procedures. So that man needs serious psychological help.
He absolutely does. And this is why it's so important. We do support those parliamentarians. There's only a handful of them that are seeking to highlight the damage this political ideology is doing, particularly to children and young people. But just, I know I said finally, but just one final question. Kirralie, you put out an email this week announcing that Binary is seeking to raise some money to put in place some dynamite advertisements in support of Senator Alex Antic, another brave parliamentarian who's looking to have a Senate inquiry into the effects of this gender ideology on children. What can you tell us about this initiative?
Yeah, well, look, the reality is, Lyle, your viewers are engaged, my subscribers are engaged, but the majority of Australians actually don't know what's going on until it comes and slaps them in the face. And that's too late. And that's, the book that we've been writing, the stories that we've been hearing. So many families just were caught unawares. And so if we can get these dynamite ads into the newspapers, one, the politicians won't have any excuse, and two, the public will also, hopefully their curiosity will be piqued and they will look into this further. It's only another step in a very long march of re-educating and helping Australians to understand what's going on. But these politicians like to hide behind closed doors and make their secret deals with lobbyists. Well, we're going to bring it out into the open and expose them and expose what's really going on, and that is children are being irreversibly, catastrophically harmed, and it's on them. We need to change these laws.
Absolutely. Well, I'd encourage everyone to go to the Binary website, binary.org.au, and make a donation towards that initiative to get those ads in the newspaper in support of the effort that Senator Alex Antic is making in the Parliament. Kirralie, thanks so much for your time today. That's been very enlightening, that segment, and we look forward to chatting again very soon.
Thanks for having me, Lyle.